All right, guys, I'm trying something new. I've never created a YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I'm using the right lingo. I'm actually live right now, which I don't know if is the best way to record onto YouTube. I feel like a grandfather, but I wanted to do something because I've been thinking about going to California for a while. I've lived in New York for over 7 years. It's been great. Started off really wild and fun, but I'm kind of getting tired of the weather. Um, could use a little bit of a change of pace. So I've been thinking about going to California. Now, decision. Do I go to Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, three bigger cities in the state, all have their pros and cons. I actually went out to Los Angeles in September of last year and didn't really feel it. I was really excited, thought I was going to fall in love with it. But a major buzzkill was driving culture, just being stuck in traffic. Coming from New York, where we don't have cars, we take the subway, which is a completely different situation, which has its own drawbacks. But I just didn't like that idea. So LA got crossed out. So I've been considering San Diego and San Francisco, two very different cities, and I like them both for kind of different reasons. San Diego has that Mediterranean, very consistent, sunny, just really nice weather year round. It's known throughout the world for this. Sounds great. I'm a big outdoors guy. I like to run. I could definitely get used to some beach activities, in addition just to being on the beach, stand-up paddleboarding, surfing, all that good stuff. So that's very appealing. It's a little bit smaller than San Francisco, so I think that could be interesting coming from a huge city like New York. Some people may think it would be too much of a culture shock. Maybe it will be, but also maybe it will be a really refreshing thing. I'm not sure. So I should mention that the last time I was in San Diego was about 8 years ago for a couple days. I've really not had a chance to fully explore the city. I had some internships in San Francisco about 10 years ago and spent about 6 months there. So I have a little more exposure, but given the tech boom and all of that industry that's flourished in the area, I think it's quite a bit different than it was 10 years ago. So kind of just going from what friends say, doing a lot of research. But the important thing is that I'm going to be taking a trip next week to check both cities out. So going back to San Diego and the pros and cons: great weather, smaller city feel, which are both pros in my mind. Seems like I'd probably have to have a car, which isn't ideal. I definitely prefer the convenience of a carless life. Obviously, New York is very convenient. There are few cities in the world that compare in terms of 24-hour operation. Maybe Tokyo, Berlin, possibly Shanghai, Beijing, cities on that sort of international scale, but not many, if any, in the US. So I'm definitely going to miss that. Having a car actually sounds kind of cool if I'm not stuck in traffic all day. The freedom that it warrants in regards to taking weekend trips, just driving to work instead of having to fight somebody for space on the train, and being lucky enough to get a seat. That's a whole nother story. New York City and the subway. So it does sound kind of appealing, but there's certainly a cost factor associated with it. Cost of living, San Diego, much less, significantly less than San Francisco. San Francisco, I think, has surpassed New York at this point in terms of living expenses, which, having lived here for quite a long time and being used to paying exorbitant rents, hard to believe that there'd be another city in the US that's even more extreme. So cost of living in San Diego is great. I mean, all arrows kind of point to San Diego, but there are some drawbacks. I don't think there'd be as much culture in San Diego. San Francisco has, the Definitely of good creative scene. I'm an architect, so I appreciate being around creativity and that sort of type of mental stimulation. It's not to say that it won't be found in San Diego, but it'll certainly be less prevalent. Let's see. The architecture industry in San Diego isn't that as good as San Francisco. San Francisco is definitely more of a hub for design, and it's kind of a world center. San Francisco is very similar to New York in that aspect. What else? I don't really know anybody in San Diego. It's a huge drawback. There's a couple people that I've connected with here and there. I've got friends with connections that they can set me up with, but that's really the biggest drawback to San Diego, is just having to really kind of like recreate my social network and professional network as well. It's kind of exciting. It's an opportunity to reinvent myself and start kind of fresh. But I really do wish there was a little bit more of a network in San Diego. So San Francisco, weather isn't as great, of course, as San Diego. It has that Northern California climate, which can be a little bit unpredictable. Even within the city itself, it's fairly small, 7 miles by 7 miles, but I understand there's little pockets, little climate pockets within that area. Still better than New York, in my opinion. Anywhere that I can go that it doesn't dip below 50 degrees, so I can still get my outside runs in. Doesn't get too hot in the summer. It sounds pretty great. Definitely not a beach town, despite there being beaches. The weather just doesn't allow for swimming any time of year, I'm pretty sure, unless you have a wetsuit. Keep in mind, I'm just really getting into learning about these cities and the climate. So if I'm totally wrong, post a comment, correct me. So San Francisco, not so great, not such great weather. Definitely a better architecture scene. Definitely more of a creative vibe, creative presence. Probably wouldn't have to have a car. In fact, my decision to go there would be based on not having a car. It's pretty, the public transportation system certainly isn't like that of New York, but I feel like it's doable if you live somewhere close to a Muni or BART or maybe even a bus line, and we're close to one as well. What else? San Francisco, cost of living. I touched on this when I mentioned San Diego. It is crazy. Looking on Trulia, Craigslist, just for apartment costs, I'm seeing costs that would get you a pretty decent studio apartment, small, tiny, actually in New York, but your own space in Manhattan. And then I'm shocked to see that it's actually, I was working today, I've got blue ink on my hands. Again, life of an architect. But yeah, these prices come up $1,700, $1,800, $2,200, and it's for a room to share. Honestly, when I first started researching San Francisco, I was pretty turned off by it. Something I'd like to do at some point is get a home, like actually buy a home, which is pretty tough in New York given the housing costs. It's possible. But San Francisco doesn't seem any easier. San Diego, it seemed like it would be within reach. So comparing the two, the apartments in San Diego are definitely going to be cheaper. Cost of living is cheaper. But if I have to have a car, that's an added expense that kind of offsets any savings from that lower monthly rents. Obviously, gas, maintenance, insurance, car payment adds up pretty quick. What else? Big one, big one for San Francisco is my network, existing network. I have a handful of friends out there. It's not huge or anything, but they're friends that I know from school, from more than a decade ago. Friends that I met while in New York. Basically, friends that I've known for many years. Most of the time, close to 10, if not over 10 years. And I've got my brother and his family out there as well, which would be nice to be within an hour from some family. So that's a huge factor. I mentioned that I'm planning a trip for next week, which we will cover in part 2. But part of that trip will be to visit my brother and his family. So that's going to be pretty exciting. So this was the intro. San Diego versus San Francisco, coming from New York, just going through and making some initial observations, comparing what I think life out there will be like compared to New York City. One thing I didn't really touch on that I understand is much more prevalent is the homeless population. New York has quite a big homeless population, but I think that population is a little more, I don't know, a little less aggressive from what I hear about the West Coast homeless, and just from what I've seen. I don't know what it's like in San Diego. I understand there's certain areas, but I don't know if it's as prevalent. San Francisco, from when I was there years and years ago, is these guys are kind of all over the place, and they typically aren't afraid to come up and sort of get in your face and ask for money. Whereas people in New York also aren't afraid to ask, but they're very sort of a little more respectful and polite about it, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what that's like up there. All right, so there are my initial observations between San Francisco and San Diego. I should mention that I'm looking for a job. It's not like I'm moving and just hanging out, looking for a job. So there's that entire aspect to it. So I have some interviews lined up for this week. Also next week while I'm out in San Francisco for San Francisco firms. I haven't really been interviewing or researching much in San Diego. The only opportunity that I've been looking into is a transfer within my current company. It's appealing. It's still an interview process, but it's something that it would present a familiar environment as opposed to sort of just cold going into a totally new firm with completely new people. That's a little bit appealing, but I don't mind starting fresh and reinventing myself from that perspective as well. So one opportunity in San Diego, which is going really well. I actually got, an informal offer today, and a bunch of interviews set up for San Francisco. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out. In that I've already got the offer for San Diego, but it'll be some time before anything shakes out from San Francisco. So should be interesting. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Before I go, I'm going to mention the purpose of making this video. There's a ton of moving to New York from San Francisco, moving to San Francisco from New York, this and that. But I just wanted to contribute my experience with this whole process. And it's been ongoing for a few weeks now. So there you have it. More to come. Part 2 will be while I'm in California, most likely San Diego. Part 3 will be from San Francisco. Future parts will be results, my opinions, and beyond that, I'll keep you guys updated as far as where I ended up and how it's going. Till then, cheers.